Well, here we are, week 26, and we are literally, as you know, halfway through the year. So today, actually, this week actually marks the halfway point. How appropriate that we would get the fable of the Emerald Stone. The Emerald Stone is all about perception. And really the idea of, in the fable, as you will read, in the fable, when the princess has one perspective of her garden, when her perception changes, the same garden looks completely different. And so part of what we're looking at with this halfway point, and what I would challenge you to look at for this point of the year, is just breathe and go inside. And just ask yourself, how has my perception changed this year? Have I had less tolerance for meanness? Have I been a stand for being kinder in my life? Have I changed the way I've perceived my own life or someone else's? When we look at perception, perception really is vital to us in terms of what we make meaning of and the way we're setting up our life, and in many ways our year ahead. So if you look at your perception of whatever you've made meaning of, is going to be the internal experience you have. So when you read the fable, and you'll notice that right away the princess is depressed, she has made meaning of her garden being a certain way, and it's a metaphor for her internal reality. So when we look at the idea of our internal reality reflects our external reality reflects our internal reality, then what we're really looking at is that continuum in our heart that goes from our wisdom inside, right, our heart, out to anyone else in our life. So what's going to happen is that wisdom from our heart will tell us, and also, I want to say, influence how we are making meaning of our life and those in it. So it's the old thing of, like, if you're feeling great, everyone in your life is terrific. If you're feeling lousy, it's like you don't like anybody. So when we look at perception, you know, the actual quote from the fable, from the angels who gave me the fable, is very interesting, because for me now, I can look at that quote and I can say, oh, that's so cliche, but you know, the idea of the heart knows what the eyes cannot see. A lot of times when I'm working with someone, I'll say, okay, close your eyes and go into your heart. Because sometimes when we're looking, what we're seeing, even subconsciously in front of us, is the same-o, right? We're seeing the same things, even though we may think we're going into a trance. So sometimes it does help. And a lot of times I'll say to people, it doesn't matter whether your eyes are closed or not. But in this case, I feel that closing your eyes and going inside and saying, you know, what am I really seeing through my heart? How is my heart influencing what's in my life? And that becomes a very important, I would say, catalyst for what's on the horizon for you. Now, it's so funny because I just said all this and it's here, and the message of the week actually does indicate, have you noticed that you can look at the same situation in a different mood and have a completely different take on it? And I think that the real grounding this week is to make different meaning of something, change our perception to change our reality. So if I perceive someone as being there to protect me, I'm going to have a very different reality around my life and them than if I think they're out to abuse or abandon me. Then my reality has shifted. So remember, you know, the cliche of what you think about, you bring about. We're actually going to change that here, because the truth is it's not always 100%, because that, I remember years ago when I first heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, then I can't think about anything, you know, because you can scare yourself. It's kind of like, oh, I've got a magic wand, what's going to happen? And it's like, no, your magic wand is a pen, and you're going to determine what your reality is based on how your hand moves on the page. So when I say this to you, I want to be super clear that it's not just what you think about that you bring about, excuse me, it's what you make your reality. So if I look at something and I say, this card means this, then I'm going to have a visceral reaction to it, and my perception of the world will change. So for example, when you're looking at a challenging card or you're looking at a challenging situation, if you have that visceral reaction, you're going to approach it in an energetic less than situation. So just to give you an example, if I know I have an outstanding bill, right? And I had this happen recently where, I'm having this issue with some former gardeners that they came twice and they're trying to charge me for 5 times that. And, when I said to them, I only owe you this, instead of negotiating it with me, they then started adding different things to it, different costs. So now what was, I think, just about $250 has gone up to like $650 because they're adding fines to it because they're not willing to talk to me. So what's interesting about that is that their perception is they're not going to get anything from me. So they're going to make it more pressure for me. And how do I perceive that? So of course I'm going to feel pressured, right? And at the same time, what's going to happen? I'm going to feel anger. So when you look at that, how I'm perceiving it, and that's going to shift my own reality around it. Do you think I want to get on the phone and talk to these people? Think about that. So one of the things that happens is that when we change our perception of it to, and I will, by the way, that will shift because I'm aware of it. And that's something else I want to say is that, awareness is such a key to this kind of thing, because to the work we're doing, because the truth is that we can have perfect example is, I had a friend who said to me, and this has always stayed with me, AA ruins drinking. And I thought, well, of course, but on the other hand, it really does ruin drinking because you have the knowledge and now your whole body knows, and you have the responsibility in that sense to shift it. But here's the thing. What I love about that process with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is that nobody's saying you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way. They're saying, here's the opportunity. If you want it, it's here. Now that is a powerful what you think about, you bring about. Because if you have in the back of your mind that AA ruins drinking and you've been to a meeting, then over time, what's going to happen naturally is you're going to go, well, if I just keep going, maybe that will be true for me. I don't know that it's true, but it may be true for me. So when I say this to you with a perception shift is that over time, I'm going to be able to say, correct my bill, make it correct, and then I'll pay the bill. But see, when we know the perception of that, right, is that, a good person would turn around and say, you know what, I'm just going to pay what I owe and then let it be damned. Well, the issue is that at times, if we create in our life people that are not that way, then I get myself into a situation where I know from my own perception, I may have an emotional perception of, I want to pay my portion of the bill, but the law may have a different perception of that. So my paying any portion of the bill before it's fixed, right, implies my guilt of owing the money. So I may have a perception of doing the right thing, but if I know that I have to wait the turn to do the right thing, then I can step back from the upset and say, well, I may want to be a good person and pay off that bill. However, until the bill is straightened out, I'm in a really bad position, because if I pay the portion I know I owe, then the law, if they decide to take me to small claims court, will say, well, you owe the rest of it. So you see, there is that consideration of what I owe. And I've been through this before where it's like, and so I've learned that, when it comes right down to it, get the bill straightened out and then do that. Now that's my perception, right? That may not be true, but because it's my perception and I am willing to pay the bill, I can kind of step back and go, okay, when you straighten it out, when you have it all straightened out, I am willing to pay my portion. So what that does for me in the perception is that I may know in me that I want to do the right thing. However, I know that if I do the right thing, the law may not perceive it the way I do. So that's a very important thing. And I think when we talk about it in general, it's a very important point to make. So a couple things I want to say about this is that, let's see. Okay. I think that this is a really good turning point for the year, because one of the things I think happens, and it says it in the fable here, that we are not really fundamentally unhappy. We actually are creating unhappiness by the way we perceive things. And that gets to, people are like, but I went through XYZ, and I get that. Okay. If that's true, then how come someone who had an identical twin, right, born within minutes of each other, went through the same family, one is a junkie and one is the head of a corporation and making gajillion dollars a year? How come that happens? It's all about perception as well. Now, there's a lot of other factors in there, obviously family and all that kind of stuff, but I'm making the point that how we perceive things is everything. So going forward into the rest of the year, are you going to choose to perceive things as working in your favor or not? And I think that's the thing, is that, one of the things that I've gotten to in having this conversation with you is that, I'm going to email them one more time and say, look, this is what I owe you. If you're willing to accept that as the full payment, we can close this deal. If not, then let me know when you're willing to, so I think that's the real skinny. Okay. So let's see. The thing that this is really about, okay. The key to this in anything is to recognize our own dark night of the soul. And I think that's the overarching concept, that our perception is going to be changed based on the way in which we are viewing something. And we know that, but it also means we have to be willing to recognize that we may be creating our own situation, and that is into our shadow side. So when you look at this 50-50 point in this year, are you on your shadow side or are you in the light? And here's what I want to say about that. Both are very viable, both are important, and both are good. Okay. So as I say this to you, I want to be super, super, super clear that there's not a bad thing happening in any card, in any of these fables. What they are is they're a reflection of an opportunity that we have to shift our perspective and shift our life. And the question for you today is, will you take that? Will you take that opportunity? Good. So obviously setting your intention for the week becomes very important in each of these fables. And I really encourage you to read that. If you've missed it, relook at it. So I want to say to you that this week, obviously, I'm going to always say, do the assignments, do the stuff. The thing I would say to you, and I want to hear from you about down below, is on page 116 in the toolkit book, I want to have you draw your attention to where it says set your intention for the week. And it says this week, ask yourself what you perceive as perhaps not accurate. What if you've been profoundly loved all along? What if by pushing you away, a parent was trying to avoid passing pain on to you? And then it talks about setting an intention to go deeper. And then it says, take a line from the prayer of St. Francis. Grant that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, in the comments below, take a minute to just say, this is what I wanted people to understand about me, and this is what I've come away from understanding about them. And I look forward to reading your comments. And remember, I'm really only commenting on the comments here on YouTube. If this is playing somewhere else, I probably won't see the comments just because I'm following it here. But I really encourage you to write that up. Take a look this week at your midpoint in the year. Go into your heart and say, what's next on the horizon for me? And I think you may find that there's some really fun stuff happening for you that maybe right now you may not be perceiving in a way that's fun because you're in it. I'll leave you with that thought. See you next week.